Ayubowan, everyone. We have with us today someone who is actually joining us from the other side of the world, and she is none other than Liv Kissper, the author, YouTuber, and a transpersonal coach. I like that title, transpersonal coach, because we have a few people that the universe have sent to this world to transform people within. And that is needed, especially in a world of today where people go through a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and immense suffering inside. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's mental. And some people go through this type of suffering throughout their life. So we need people like Liv to show us that, well, there is another way of looking at life and existence. There are different ways of looking at yourself. So I think her role is very essential in today's world. And there is a saying that the world has enough doctors and engineers and IT personnel, but we need philosophers, we need artists, we need spiritual people. That is uh, to make people find solace in their uh, day-to-day life and how they carry on with their um, careers, or whether it is whatever, uh, in a, a more a kind of a serene mindset, so to say. All right. So welcome, Lee. Welcome to this forum. But before that, let me very quickly give a background of Liv, because she had been into stringent study for nearly 2 decades, and she was into a spiritual search, and she had traveled around, especially in Central America, and she had taken part in so many healing um, sessions and meditation and all that. And today she has emerged as a coach, a life coach, a transpersonal. So we are going to hear from her, and we are lucky to have her for this forum, and from the other side of the world, as I said. Uh, Liv, welcome, welcome. So nice
Yeah,
to
thank
have
you
you with
so
us.
much. Thank you so much, Vipula. Thank you for having me here. So happy to be here.
All right. Now, Liv, let me start with the most common question first, but later I will go into more intricate stuff as we
Mhm.
go on. Now, we call ourselves, my life, my story, and then existence. And people take different paths um, in order to find happiness. I want to be happy. Whatever I do, I want to be happy within. And then there are so many ways. Some follow religion, some follow various philosophies, some go for retreats and they attend meditations, and they listen to sermons. And today it's a massive spiritual world out there. So you have so many options that you can follow. Now, what we want to ask you is that when people say life existence, what comes with it inevitably is suffering, suffering within, mental and physical suffering. And no one can say, okay, I'm happy, I have not gone through any kind of suffering. No one can say. Now, how do you see this word suffering in a lifetime of a human being?
How do I see it? I think it's definitely a very essential part of the human story. And that's that's it. It's pretty simple. It's part of the story. It's without the suffering, that would be just non-duality. So I think that, when you look at, I'm also an actress in the theater. And so when you look at any kind of stories, there is always these, there must be conflict. There must be some expectations and hopes. There must be everything that brings that dissonance. And it's when you look at overall, because we always look at suffering as just this one thing, something happens. But when we look overall, we realize that every suffering can bring us actually closer to more freedom, or closer to something that can happen completely unexpectedly. But then it also depends, what exactly do you mean by suffering? Because everyone imagines different thing. And I don't really like talking about like hypothetical scenarios. I like to be a little bit more specific, just because, yeah, everybody always imagines different things, and it's good to put some distinctions.
Okay, let's say physical suffering due to some illness or some disease or some whatever, some kind of a physical suffering that is understood. There is pain in the body. Then we say psychological suffering. Now that arises due to so many things. Your expectations, you are not happy in the present moment, and then what you have been looking for had never been realized. And people have this restlessness or anxiety, or you are stressed out with your work. Now this is a reality in today's world, whether you are a student in the university, because I know this, I'm a lecturer, and so I know what kind of stressful things that the students go through, and then you enter the working arena, and you opt for what kind of a job. Sometimes they start their business, and some people they work for companies, and then the suffering continues because you're stressed. You are so much stressed out to reach your goals, and then you get married, and then thereafter, you have more expectations. Now, if you are to give more, kind of a general description as to how people should look at themselves with regard to this suffering caused by stress, anxiety, depression, anger, hatred, all that.
Yeah, I think that the common belief is that I suffer. And by the way, a lot of people don't even admit suffering. I know so many people, they are just fine. It's just my wife, or they just always, the trouble is outside. Like, I'm okay. So it's first step to realize that there is something. Usually suffering comes from tolerating things, settling things that we know that it's not good for us. And it's also, if I could put a simple definition, it's basically that we confuse what isn't with what is. So there's a story how things should be, and we confuse it for reality. So we believe we have this, we believe that, there is just something should be different. And we can't put our finger on it because it's just this 100% confusion. Like, if I suffer, I believe my thoughts. So of course, like, the thoughts, what I'm believing is what causes the suffering. It's not the actual event. It's not my boss. It's not, that I don't have enough money. It's not that I don't have enough anything. It's always what I believe about it. And those stories that are created by the self-identity are just so powerful. And everyone has different story. Everyone has a different survival story. And everyone has a different, kind of like a catastrophic story, like when the self-identity basically creates a story that tells us what we need to achieve in order to feel happy. So some people believe it is more money. Maybe it's marriage. Maybe it's achieving some sort of high status, maintaining high, self-image, or even spiritual awakening. So so we try to achieve this, except we never get there. There is just always never lastingly get there, because it's an illusion. It's all based on mirage. The self-identity just creates, so you just keep chasing this, and it never really just stop and look at what there actually is. And so that's why I love inquiry, because in inquiry you collapse these stories, and so you're free to see what there really is. And it's shocking. It's so unexpected. that the truth is that everything is already available now, but the now is not a moment in time. It is really what happens without time, without the stories and assumptions and all of these, without it, and it's available. So getting to that point, if there was getting to a point, which there
Yeah,
isn't.
Liv, something I know something came out, something beautiful that came out from what you just said. Everything is already there. There's nothing to go after. And then the problem is with the self-identity, which is illusory. Now, I would like to dig into that and give us some examples. When you say self-identity, is it because people don't turn themselves, uh, don't they look at themselves in a realistic manner, or is there a need for you to analyze yourself first as to who you are and what you are? How does this work? You know, how to detect, how to diagnose this problem with the self identity which you mentioned?
I wouldn't call it a problem because it's really the self-identity just doesn't even exist. It's like a shadow. So it's whatever you believe that you are. You know, I'm a high achiever, or I am thinking my thoughts, or I am analyzing my personality. Everything that is connected, even anything that's about, you know, the self-identity basically creates a story, and I believe it's all about me.
You said everything you think about yourself
Mhm.
may not be true, or it is not true. Now, uh, I mean, that's a very crucial point that, anyone who grasps this is free, right? I mean, anyone who is able to see this, that this self-identity, which doesn't even exist, as you said, if one can see through this, and that's freedom.
Yeah, but when you say one can see through this, it's the self-identity can never see through this. The self-identity lives in a story and it cannot question, it really just believe what it believes. But that's an interesting point when you say all the, the things that, stressful thoughts cause actually suffering. I would say that, yeah, anything that feels stressful, there is always something that is not true behind it. But we don't know because we believe it 100% to be true. That's why there is this big disconnect. And the more far away we are from the truth, the more stress and anxiety we feel. It's just overwhelming because it's so far away from your true nature.
Are you suggesting that these are all caused by the thoughts that are arising uninvited? They just come and then take you on a long journey. And and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of people imagine that a thought, it just arises and, comes and goes. But I wouldn't call it just thoughts. They are just a whole context. It's a whole belief. It's like a whole universe from which we arrive, which we coming, the self-identity that's coming from. So if you coming from a place when you feel unsafe, like, of course, the way you will be reacting to the world is very different than when you're coming from a story which tells you that you are always safe.
Well, now say I have no control over my thoughts. They arise from anywhere. It can be connected to my work, it can be connected to my family, it can be connected to my friends. Something arises and tells a story. Now, if that is the main cause for suffering, uh, how would you react? How would you how do you train yourself to be a witness for this whole thing?
Mm. Yeah, inquiry. It's the self-identity, as I said already, it cannot question, it cannot look, it believes, it thinks it knows. It's the knower. It's It's something that tells you what will happen. Every time when we feel anxiety, it's not because of the present moment. I cannot just relax or observe my thoughts in the present moment. I can try, but it just feels there's always something missing. And anxiety always comes from anticipating some future scenario that we already imagine, an image of ourselves suffering or not being good enough or losing something that's dear. And that's not even all. The worst part is that even has consequences. So there's like a whole series, the story, it's a whole series of events that the mind's already imagining. And the self-identity just knows it will happen. So we know that we don't have enough money. We know that we need to do certain things. We know that they're gonna judge me. We know we shouldn't do that and we should do that. It's this knowing, and that's why it just so disconnects us from our true nature. Because it's just so not true, but we don't know it's not true because we are confused by those stories 100%. They are so convincing, and they are tied to the very last, all the way to the end of the story. So every anxiety is always tied to the fear of death, anxiety of the final expiration. So the stakes are extremely high. So whenever I feel anxiety maybe about a presentation at work, I'm actually not feeling just anxiety about the presentation at work. It goes, the mind already imagines the consequences, like I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to die alone. So I'm already feeling all of these anxieties from just dying alone, and feel so much, it can feel very overwhelming. That's why we feel so overwhelmed when we feel, and we don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, you are being very realistic when you explain this. The scenarios that you imagine, and that scenario, it can be the worst case scenario. Of course, the biggest fear is the death. But as you said, even if you have to do a presentation and you think you might fail, I mean, you might not do well, and that will lead to A, B, C, and then you will lose your job, and then and what will happen thereafter. And now that thought or those thoughts are arising in the now, and they may not be true most of the cases. And 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 in simple language, yes, what when you are saying it, we understand. Yeah, that's true. But we are still there. You see?
Mhm. Exactly. We are not even, a lot of times, we're not even aware the story is there. We don't notice. We just feel that anxiety. We don't know where it's coming from. It's completely hidden. And so that's why it only comes up when I work with my clients, for example, and they feel triggered in those times when they feel stressed and triggered and unsafe. So I ask them, what do they imagine about these scenarios? And they are able to tell me all of these consequences. But when I'm just getting up in the morning, preparing for something, like any little thing can trigger a huge anxiety, any little judgment that I imagine, because it's really threatening that self-identity. And the self-identity just wants to survive. Like it knows that it cannot survive in truth, or, when you get into your true nature, when you connect to your true nature, the shadow just, it's not even there. It's never been there. It's never been real. But it's fighting for survival. It doesn't want that light. So it will do anything to convince you, or convince itself essentially, that you need to do certain things in order to survive. And the whole story is completely made up. It's just not, there's nothing real about it. It's not connected to reality, but we don't know. We really feel, because we don't know this, what's underneath all these consequences. We just want to. So what we do, we chase those things that we think that will make us happy instead of looking what's underneath and really just collapsing this story, looking for the truth, what is actually true, as opposed to what we imagine. And yeah, the person, the self-identity cannot just decide not to feel anxious. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. That was my point. Now here it is already illusory. So an illusion cannot dispel an illusion. You see? So
Mhm.
now, and I'm trying to get into the grassroots level of this issue. Now, say uh, I come to you, and you are a great counselor, and you know exactly, because you have experienced this and you know what is Now, I come and tell you, I'm worried about my future, and then I anticipate so many these things, and this is, this mental noise, it's causing, and then for you to guide me, I'm just this question may look little stupid, but what I'm saying is I can't be with you all the time, and then every
Mhm.
time I have something, hey, leave, I have this now, now, what will you tell me? Now, it's not practical. So you must be having some kind of techniques through which you judge individuals when they raise questions. Now, it just, I mean, we are not asking you to sort of elaborate all that, but just give me one or two examples for the benefit of the viewers of this program, because, uh, and you are quite new to this part of the world. I mean, in our part of the world, we are not that much exposed to this kind of a open discussion. So therefore, I would like you to just carry on with that, the same wave that you carried up to now, and how you could give one or two tips or examples, because you are not going to be with a person who's going to seek your help all the time. So you have to sort of say, all right, you look at life in a different way or something. Just give us one or two examples how you deal with such situations.
Mhm. So you want some tips, you want some advice,
Oh no, 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 no. I didn't mean
the
that. I didn't
techniques.
mean that.
Yeah, I already mentioned that for me, I just love inquiry. When I came to inquiry for the first time, it just blew my mind. Because when you think about it, all techniques that we're trying to do and tools and methods, it's always the self-identity is trying to do something. It's trying to feel
Yeah,
better. And the beauty of inquiry is that the one who is inquiring and questioning our beliefs that we actually believe 100% are true, it can never be the identity. It can never be the self. As you said, the illusion cannot deal with
yeah,
something else that's not illusion. So
yeah.
the one that inquires is not the self-identity. And it's not, I cannot even call it the one. It's really the no one. So it's getting connected to who you truly are, which is not a person, which is not a thought. It doesn't have any
Mm,
agenda. That's the most important. The self-identity always have agenda, always tries to feel better, try to achieve something. And it's always in the future, just never now. It's not concerned with the now. So inquiry is the way, it's a system to questioning what we believe is 100% true, including personal stories uh, that give us suffering. It could be inquiry into time, into space, into the self itself. And I just love doing inquiries on the whole self identities, helping people to see what is, that it's got a plan, it's trying to achieve something. So we collapse the whole plan by asking them these deep questions. And they are not, see, inquiry is not just deep questions because it's not answered through the mind. It's not just, it's
right,
really, we need to bypass the mind. We need to bypass the story. So that needs
right.
to completely just collapse. And then we are free to see what there really is. And that's why it's so powerful to really look. And when the self-identities collapse, when we realize that we've been trying to do something and it's just first it's not working because we spend
Mm,
lifetime of doing something. And if you are in a relationship, for example, usually one person tends to be a little bit more angry and the other person maybe is a little bit more chill. And the reason for that is that my anger is I'm trying to change the other person. And if I'm too
mm,
chill, I'm also trying to, like kind of, and
mm.
it just doesn't work. So it's realizing that what we're trying to do and what have been trying to do has never been working, but we don't know until we actually do inquiry, until we go into the self-identity, into the one who is so invested in just achieving that illusory peace, whether it's relationship
Absolutely.
or work or
Mm,
spiritual enlightenment. And when we get to the very root of it and we collapse that, and there's just freedom to really be and see what there actually is and what there actually is available for us, which before we completely missed it. We ignore all the red flags. We choose to ignore the red flags. We choose to ignore the green flags when we are in that story. It's the whole purpose of that story is to keep you in that maze, to keep you completely disconnected from reality. But we don't know this because we believe that's reality. So
in this inquiry, something I notice in what you say is that you sometimes speak like a non-dual kind of a teacher. Sometimes, not it. I mean, it sounds, but you are not exactly that, because now non-dual teacher will straight away say there is no free will and choice. There is, the what happens happens, and this is what is, and these are the usual non-dual versions. But you are not exactly that. You come in between,
mm,
and that's why I said, that's a crucial role of a kind of a life coach, to sort of, even the words that you are saying, it has the power of resonance. It resonates, like I'm not saying I'm hearing it, but it resonates. That means you feel them. So now, with how do you balance this? On the one hand, you are not saying, no free will and joy, there's nothing you can do, that's, is this is what is. At the same time, you speak on a self-inquiry or turning attention to yourself, so you seem to be striking a balance in between. And how do you do that?
yeah, that's a really, really important question. And it took me many years to just, work with the language. But it's true. It's actually a lot of people cannot really resonate with some of the non-duality teachings because it's so outside of their belief system. So what I do, I try to meet people where they're at and then
Mm,
show them the door into what is possible. So I speak in a very dualistic language. And I also believe that in life, there is no need to feel always free. And there's this story about what we imagine that enlightenment or freedom would look like. There is no emotion, there is only peace, only abundance, only do good things, good, good,
yeah,
good, everything comes. This is what most people imagine, right? And so there's this dream about that this non-duality is just, it has, and I think there's this other side of the story as well. When we talked about already that, the finances doesn't give you happiness, or the marriage doesn't give you happiness, and all of these things. I also believe that there is nothing wrong with just following your desires. It's crucial in that story because I also see a lot of
mm,
people resigning from their desires because of the non-duality teachings. So they
that's right.
resign, but what happens is they actually end up tolerating their situations. And there's a whole bunch of stories from the self-identity underneath that tells them why you can't do that, why you shouldn't do that. So I think it's so beautiful when we are in a everyday life, everyday living, just be part of the story. It's a hero's journey. We try to get our desires, and it's at the end of the day, it's just attachment to a certain outcome in desires. When we are just following our desires, like it just brings us to the next levels, and it's only the stories that are in the way that are painful. And so I believe that it's totally okay to be in a story and to live in a duality, basically. But when it hurts, when you feel stress, tension, judgments, all of these things, there is an option to open the door and come out and really see what is there, what's available, and it connects to the true nature.
Exactly. Now, when you're stressed out, when you're anxious, when you are depressed, you just said that, you just open the door and connect yourself with the true nature. Now, what is the true nature? Is it acceptance, or you just surrender to what is, or how does it work?
Yeah, there is nobody there to do anything. It's this recognition. It really, it's completely beyond time and space. So there's no agenda. There's no imagination. Remember when we talked about the images that, you imagine doom and gloom in the future, you
Yeah,
anticipate.
yeah, yeah,
These are
yeah.
all images, completely non-existent, but we can't help but be hypnotized into them. So when that all collapses and there's nothing there, there's no birth, there is no death, there's no agenda what we need to do. There is just this spaciousness and freedom in just being. So there is And especially when you come from some really stressful situation, very painful situation, you're hurting, and you can open this door and really sit in that. And not just that you feel connected and better in that moment, but it really has huge benefits for your life in general, because you stop reacting to the world that you imagined how it was. You stop reacting to the people, because you basically recognize that everything is available, everything is exactly how it should be. And before, maybe you were scared of something, you were trying to avoid a certain situation. You realize that there is nothing to be scared of, that all the danger is completely imagined, and you even look forward to that situation, which is a huge difference than before, when you were like, I never want to go through that again. You go into like, you know what, I'm excited to do it again, because there is freedom and wisdom, and there is those opportunities that you really didn't see before. And now you know that they are essential, because it's just what you are.
Yeah, it's in a way, it gives someone a huge kind of a mindset to overcome any kind of imagination that you have had, that I've gone through that, I don't want to go through it again anymore, kind of a situation. And what you're saying is that even if you have to go through that with different perspectives, it may not be what you think it was, is that what you're trying to say, right? No, um, I'm still trying to sort of see how, the best we can uh, assist the audience that will be watching from this part of the world, this conversation. Now, this the person whom you think you are, or say I, the word I, it's not just this body. It has to be comprising everything that you can imagine. But logically, yes, you will say, yeah, it's my job, it's my family, it's my friends, everything comprises this whole thing called I. Logically, someone will say, yes, that's true. But in experientially, you might not grasp it, because that self-centered way of, thinking about yourself will continue. Now, that requires some kind of a, you drop a bomb, and then suddenly, you suddenly realize, or not really you, but suddenly a realization or seeing through that what I have been imagining is not exactly true, including the futuristic, what you said, that, all the bad scenarios. Now, if you, now, since you are a counselor, since you are a life coach, how would you drop this bomb? Of course, it depends on individuals, but straight away, would you take a kind of a gradual approach on a person, or you straight away break that framework and say, well, that's it?
This is a really good question. And every person is completely different. And it really depends what they are ready for. Some people are ready for the bomb, like they are ready to detonate the whole multi-story building at once. But most people, they aren't. The self-identity is extremely invested. It's got benefits. It receives certain benefits by holding on to those stories. So sometimes we just work with the painful beliefs that cause the suffering, especially through transitions, when people I'm always looking with what we are tolerating, what we are settling for. It shows you the perfect spots where the self-identity is hiding, and starting to dig a little bit deeper. And once you start seeing really that whatever it tries to achieve, it's not helping, and you can start settling into your true nature simply through questioning and doing inquiry on the individual beliefs. And then you can go a little bit deeper and really start doing inquiry on the identity itself, on the self itself.
Yeah, because you see, sometimes there is a tendency when someone says, like, all these are imagination that may be true. I mean, one would say, I have to pay my bills. I have to look after my kids. I have to look after the expenses. And then how can you say they are imagination? Those are realities. And I'm wondering how to earn sufficient income to settle. Just an example, which in turn results in causing a lot of inner suffering. Now, in a situation like that, how would you deal with that? Because some imaginations may be true. It's you cannot possibly say it's imagination because the consequences, if you don't pay your rent, then you will be ousted from your house. Now, to that extent, it is real. And the imaginary part, where how can one say that it's imaginary, and how would you respond to that kind of question?
Yeah, the imagination is pure imagination and it has no evidence in reality. But yeah, what you're describing, if there is something that's connected to reality, that is real. But we don't feel stress or anxiety or any suffering from connection to the reality. We always imagine something about it that is not true. So if it hurts, I guarantee you 100% there is something around it that is not true if you dig deeper enough. And there is nothing, and as you're saying, it's a really good question because, of course, like, if you have to pay the bills and you pay it, but there is no stress about it. Once you start feeling stressed about it and you start feeling maybe that, some sort of, you start creating stories about, I don't even have money, I have to pay the rent. And it's a story. Once you question it, you realize that, you don't have to. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It just means that maybe there's different options. And it could be as small as maybe you speak to someone and negotiate, but you just don't see those opportunities. You don't see those
Mm,
because you are in such a story, and that story keeps you so hooked to that survival story that you
mm,
miss all
mm,
the
mm,
opportunities, all the connection
mm,
with people, all the support there is. And there really is more
mm.
support than we think. When we are stressed, we don't see that support. And so
Yeah,
that's what creates that stress, magnifies it.
that's true because I especially brought in that example. You have to pay the bills, and if you are unable and you are hooked on to that story and the consequences, but you don't
Mhm.
see the other option if you are not looking at the real situation. Because if it is a problem with regard to a relationship, you are involved in a relationship and that is causing, and then someone will easily say, just give it up, just set apart, and then it's over. I mean, it's not as easy as what we say, but what I'm saying is, if it is connected to a relationship, someone will say, then you just do away with that relationship. But if it is a finance, if it is something serious, if it is some illness due to which someone is unable to move on as usual, then there is certain amount of reality. But as you rightly said, I agree with you, because are we overstressed than the real problem? Now that I think is a good thing that came from you. That requires looking at it in a more meaningful manner to see whether there are other options, another way of looking at it. Because as you said, the self-identity itself may be causing. You know, I had a position in the society. Now, if this happens, people will start disregarding me, that sort of a thing. Yes, you are right.
Mhm.
Now, yeah, let me I think for the benefit of our viewers, there are some countries people don't care that much about their kind of social standing, the type of vehicle you use, the mansion that you are living in. I mean, there are some countries people, they are okay. But in countries, uh, including our country, the success is measured by the material gains, how much money you have, how much wealthy you are, and what kind of a car that you are driving, what kind of a house that you are living in, and then your social standing. Uh, and the respect and the success is measured by those indicators. Now, my question is, it is a social norm rather than individualistic. So an individual somehow strive to, keep that, I have to be there. I have to be. So if you suddenly decide, no, I couldn't care less, let anyone go after their dreams, but I will be what I am. And that is seen as some kind of a renunciation. You are detaching from the rest of the pack. You see, this is some kind of a thing that you can see here. Uh, you may not be that much familiar with that kind of a situation, the social standing, so much attachment to social standing. I'm not suggesting that people should not go after wealth. Yes, they have to do, you have to make a living. But this, that you are lost in the social indication. The society decides who you should be. Now, it's a huge problem with people when they compare, or rather when they look at themselves through the eyes of the society. Any message from you?
Yeah, the self-identity, it's all about being seen as a good person. So the society plays so well to that, It's remember when we talked about the example of, you have to pay the rent this month, otherwise you're gonna be
Uh,
kicked out and you're gonna die. The only thing that you're really dealing with, maybe, and as I'm saying, every situation is different. So I don't want to say like this is always
uh,
like this. Um, is that you really just don't want to have that uncomfortable situation because your self-image you're gonna be seen as a bad person. You want to do anything to maintain the self-image of being a good person, paying the rent. So this is way more, that's what really causes the stress and suffering than anything else. We would do anything. We hide, we pretend, we live inauthentic lives just to be seen on the outside as a good person. And whenever that is threatened, it causes enormous amount of suffering because we need to make sure that everyone else thinks that we are good people.
yes, I was also going little beyond that. Uh, my neighbor is having the latest model of this car, and I'm using an old one. So I'm like sort of my ambition from there onwards is to work double shift and then earn more money until I get that, which I think I will be happy when I'm able to get something like that. And then
Mhm.
uh, it may be a normal kind of a social thing among, but it depends on from society to society. Now,
Well,
for example,
okay. Well, it
yeah,
seems
yeah,
like
go
it's
ahead.
societal. It seems like it's a societal issue, but you're still dealing with your story in your head. The reason why you feel, that maybe your neighbor has a better car and you feel some sort of emotion, if you feel triggered, because not everybody feels triggered about it, but if you have a story about it, you already maybe imagine that he's happier than you. Maybe he's got better
Yeah,
women because of this car. So it's a whole bunch of story how he's gonna be
yeah,
happier than you, and that's why we feel. But we don't know. Maybe tomorrow he will take that car and he will die in a car accident.
yeah,
But we
yeah,
don't see those unexpected turns. We only imagine what it and that's why we're so far away from reality. We are so far away from the truth that it creates that stress, like, oh, and then we want to achieve even more and we want to succeed even more. So we running on the treadmill and trying to make more money just so we can be, and it never ends. There's always infinite number of things that you can compare it to in your
wow,
mind. So you will never, some of the most successful people, it's not like, okay, I have now arrived. You never really arrive to the place based
yeah,
on what you have physically or materially, because there's always a thought can come up, tells you like, but what if you lose it?
yeah, yeah. No,
So you want more.
definitely. Now, Liv, I will take you to a little kind of spiritual sphere. This may be my last question now. Now, all what you said in this short interview is sufficient. I don't think you should say anything more because you just trashed out. Now, however, now we used to hear these beautiful notions, whether it is modern spirituality or non-duality or Advaita or whatever, that we are hearing this word oneness. Everything is one. We are connected, and there is no person in the body. And then of course what I said, what happens, happens, that kind of thing. Now you are maintaining some kind of a balance, but I still want you to tell us the true nature in terms of, what shall I say, that um, when the self, the notion of self collapses, or or was it your experience through which you are able to speak like that, like you are using the duality language to explain some aspects of non-duality. So from the spiritual, a guy who is looking for spirituality, spiritual enlightenment, which is another desire, of course, yeah, that I understand. But a person who is into a spiritual study, who is meditating and who is, trying to see something different to what a usual human is experiencing. Because in non-duality, it says, everything is one, and there is no time, there is no space, all that. If I can hear something from you, that would suffice.
About what is the true nature or what is non-duality? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking?
No, what is the true nature? Let's forget non-duality. What is the
Mhm.
true nature apart from the experience of a human being from the viewpoint of this self-identity? Okay, self-identity, you look at the society, you look at the, and you go through suffering, and that I understand. But the true nature, if you are to describe the true nature, are you using the word oneness? There is no time, there is no space. Will you be using the same words that some of the spiritual speakers are touching on?
I wouldn't use the word oneness. That's why I love non-duality, because it doesn't mean one. It just means there is not two. And I think it's so
Yes.
profound. It really, there's just so much in that. I could talk for hours just about that meaning. But for me, very simply, non-duality, true nature, it means whatever is left, whatever there is already without the self-identity, without the stories, without the assumptions, including time and space. I usually don't talk about the time and space. I wrote a whole book about the inquiry on the illusion of time, because those are just such big topics. But yeah, just whatever's left without those. And I always see non-duality as ones and zeros, just like in a computer, you have like everything is based on ones and zero. So one is what is and zero is what isn't. So it's one plus zero. And really, you cannot separate like the self-identity, the illusory, the shadow, really just, even though it's non-existent, it's not there. It's part of the story. And I think it's so crucial that we also include it, because when we don't include it, when we just exclude it, it leads to so much spiritual bypassing, thinking there is only, the dream of enlightenment, pure bliss, uh, pure, of course, but it's both at the same time, and it cannot be divided.
That's right. So now that you mentioned this word, some tend to say, it's a dream. Um, it's like dream like, because in a dream, what happens in a dream happens in what you think is the real world. It's the same thing. I know there are a lot of teachers who are comparing life and existence to a dream, because the characteristics of a dream, there is no doer, and what happens there, and there is no time, there's no space. It's only when you wake up you realize it's a dream. So then they advocate: is there a way of waking up from this dream? Do you use the word dream in order to compare something?
Sometimes it's a little bit different, but you know the you dreams all the time. You dream right now. It's constant. It never ends unless you are in a deep wave sleep. It just happens all the time, except right now we are not aware of the dreams. It's just maintaining the identity, like making sure we look good, we achieve what we want to achieve. It's all there, but unnoticed. So in a way, it's similar to a dream, because it's so interesting to notice the story, to notice those images. And that's exactly what I do. I'm just creating this online course where I guide people to experience the non-dual true nature through inquiry and through just very simple 7-minute morning practice, when they can question those, when they can actually look into those images, what they imagine of the anticipated scenario is and what the consequences of the anxiety is, and then just collapse it in their non-dual awareness, so they can experience it. Because really, whatever we try to describe here, everyone's just imagining something. It can only be experienced. Otherwise, it's just another imagination, like, oh, it should be like this and it should be like this. And it just builds up on the world of fantasy.
That's precisely my point. I mean, I tend to accept that there has to be something experiential and some transformation within. I'm not, uh, trying to conceptualize, but some kind of some transformation. So that's why we need actually, uh, you know, uh, life coaches like you, so that when you hear words, they tend to resonate. Now, Liv, I'm not going to stress you out with any more words. I think you said a lot of things for our audience to ponder and analyze. And now I have to give your, I'm sure you do these counseling sessions. And if our audience and members want to contact you and get an appointment or private booking or some kind of thing, I believe your website will have all those details, right?
Yeah, there is all the information, including my online course, First
All right.
Ignition. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but how will I get them? Because is it in your email, or
Yeah,
can I have them after?
it's liveunbound.com. So it's LIV, like live, and unbound, like a dog unbound of the leash.
Yeah. All right.
Mhm.
I will mention that in the YouTube. So, Liv, I'm very grateful that you joined us from the other side of the world, as I said before. And it's very nice of you because, I mean, finally, it looks like the, the, the truth is opening up much faster than we thought. It's available, which wasn't the case probably 2, 3 decades ago. And especially, a young person like you coming and saying this, it's really great, because the spirituality we knew uh, long time ago, a guru with a long beard and sitting on a high chair, and that was the kind of a notion of a spiritual. Not anymore. Now you hear
Yeah.
it all over. That's why. So I'm very grateful to you. So thank you very much indeed. And we are hoping to have you, later on, whenever you are free, to exchange some words like this in a conversation like this. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you so much, Vipula. This was so good. You had some amazing questions, just really good questions. It's really beautiful to see where you're coming from. And obviously, you have done a lot of work on yourself, a lot of, you know, a lot. And it's being seen that you have this genuine curiosity into just, what would you call
Right.
it? Being in your true nature, being committed to, I'm losing
Exactly.
my words, but it's there, it's seen. So thank you so much.
So thanks a lot. Thank you very much indeed. Hang on a